Inside a hidden room of a house Yigang of the Beat clan hid from assassins with his servant, Yigang turned to his servant and apologized, saying he is a slow runner. No matter how much he practiced, he never got better at it. He was unimaginably slow. He recalled his previous life and says ever since he was young he always got last place in races, and he got bullied for it a lot. The bullies would harass him then run away. The servant asked Yigang if he didn't have any friends to defend him. Yigang shushed her and asked her to listen to his story. He says he always chased after the bullies, but they always ran away carefree, probably because they thought he couldn't catch them. However, in the end he was able to catch up to them and beat their asses. The servant asked Yigang how he was able to catch up to the bullies, and he said he never gave up. He didn't give up even when his heart felt like it was going to give up and he tasted blood. The servant started coughing up blood. Yigang pulled her close and says he didn't give up then and he won't give up this time either. With her dying breath, the servant told Yigang that no matter what anyone says, he was a good young master. Yigang told her not to worry and says he refuses to get caught by assassins easily. He would fight until his dying breath before they took him. The servant smiled in Yigang's warm embrace. She told him he is too weak, but says his words were still comforting to her. Yigang continued on saying even if the assassins were able to catch him he would run away. He would also make sure to take the medicines she always bothered him to take, and take good care of his body so he could live until he turned 100. The servant took her last breath. Yigang pulled her in even closer and said he would make sure to take good care of himself so his servant can rest peacefully. The assassins entered the house Yigang and his servant were hiding in, and they began tearing the place down looking for him. He placed his servant's body down and said he will make sure to come back and give her a proper funeral. The assassins found the blood trail and began making their way in the secret room. Yigang decided not to give himself up because he promised his servant Sowa, and he began running away. In his previous life, Yigang had a long and painful battle with cancer. In his last moments, he thought that he could finally rest peacefully. But instead he reincarnated into a Muram family you would read about in manhwas, and the lucky part is the family he reincarnated into was one of the 7 great clans. The Beat clan was established by the legendary martial artist, the divine immortal Blade. But there was a problem. The body he reincarnated into was born with Taiyan Kai blockage, a disorder in which you cannot collect internal energy. Most with this disorder die before they reach the age of 20. His disorder was an unacceptable flaw as the direct bloodline of the martial arts clan, and he often faced discrimination. Thanks to that, he left the clan the year he turned 12 and he stayed in a far-off place waiting for his death, but he had his servant Sowa to keep him company. He thought life wouldn't be too bad if he was able to live peacefully like this. However, fate had different plans. Assassins were sent to take his life. Yigang continued down the path in the secret room and it led to a dead end. The end of the path had nothing but a rusted sword struck in the ground. Yigang approached the sword guessing that he wouldn't even be able to cut a radish with it. But it's better than him facing the assassins without a weapon, so he tried taking it from the ground. But he was struggling because the sword was heavier than he expected. As he struggled to pick up the sword, the assassins caught up to him. One of the assassins says Yigang runs like a little rat for someone who is supposed to be the son of a renowned clan. Yigang was finally able to pick up the sword. He turned to the assassins and asked why they were running their mouths with arrogance despite being inferior. He says how dare they try to use their blades on someone from the Beat clan. He told the assassins that if they reveal their identities and beg for forgiveness he might spare them. Yigang was putting on an act, but in reality he was praying the assassin would fall for his intimidation. One of the assassins stepped up and says he would reveal his identity. He took off his mask and told Yigang that his name is Jiok Pyo. Yigang's intimidation plan failed. He asked the assassin if they were after his life. Pyo laughed and said Yigang was pretty smart. He told Yigang that he needs to serve his head up to his lord. Yigang pointed his sword at him and says he would cut off his serpent tongue. Pyo was impressed. He told Yigang that he was braver than the rumors made him out to be, and said he would let him get the first attack. Yigang became nervous. He questioned if he would be able to do this with sword techniques that are useless. Suddenly a ghost appeared next to him saying he wasn't holding the sword properly. Yigang was shocked and he shouted out loud and moved away from the ghost. The ghost looked at Yigang disappointedly, saying he was a weak and imprudent descendant. Yigang was confused. He couldn't understand why a ghost was suddenly insulting him. Pyo, who was waiting for Yigang's attack, asked what he was doing. Yigang pointed at the ghost and asked Pyo if he didn't see the thing that just appeared. The ghost told Yigang to be polite when speaking about him. Pyo says Yigang must have gone insane from fear. This confused Yigang and he began to question if the assassin couldn't see the ghost. He concluded that the ghost must be an ancestor, which means the afterworld exists. He thought about Sowa and smiled, saying he will see her soon. Pyo thought he misjudged Yigang. He decided to kill him quickly, and he activated Sword Kai. Yigeng was taken aback by the sword Kai. He wanted to run away, but he needs to at least fight till the end if he wants to face Soa in the afterlife with dignity. The ghost asked Yigeng if he didn't learn swordsmanship, and says his posture is a mess. Yigeng told the ghost that he has Tei and Kai blockage. The ghost told Yigeng that he didn't like the fact that he was speaking so casually to him. Yigeng told the ghost that he is not in the position to care about that right now. The ghost says it must be fate that he and Yigeng met in this situation. The ghost introduced himself as Beak Xiangchen, the divine immortal blade, and he asked Yigeng to leave the assassin to him. Yigeng was confused. He asked Xiangchen to explain how he planned on dealing with the assassins. Xiangchen told him not to worry and says he will borrow his body for a bit. Xiangchen possessed Yigeng's body, and Pio, who had enough, attacked. But his attack was easily blocked. Xiangchen, who was now in control of Yigeng's body, says how dare an assassin try to attack a beak martial artist with a blade. Xiangchen countered and disarmed Pio. Xiangchen sneered at Pio and says he would show him the price for attacking a beak martial artist with a sword. Xiangchen used the seventh form of the heaven and earth blade. Yigeng couldn't believe it. His body was moving on its own, and he was using the last forms of the heaven and earth blade technique which were lost. So perhaps this ghost really is the divine immortal blade. After defeating the assassins, Xiangchen asked Yigeng if he paid attention to his technique. Yigeng told the ghost that he did. He was saddened by the fact that he found the ghost ancestor after Soa's passing. Xiangchen told Yigeng that killing the assassins was his last act of kindness towards his dying descendant. Yigeng asked Xiangchen if he was going to die. Xiangchen said yes, and told Yigeng that he couldn't do anything about it because he pushed his body to the extreme despite it being already broken from Kai blockage. He says Yigeng could have survived if he ate a miracle medicine like the pure milk of heaven and earth or the millennium snow ginseng. Yigeng asked Xiangchen if the millennium he ate last year would work somewhat. Yigeng passed out, and the last thing he remembered was Xiangchen telling him he wasn't sure. Inside the Beak clan medicine room, the physician shouted, "This is a miracle." Beak Hajin, the second young master, and Yigeng's younger brother, asked the doctor if Yigeng would be okay. The doctor says of course and told Hajin that Yigeng looked lively. He asked Hajin if Yigeng had ever taken a rare miracle medicine. Hajin says he's not sure, but they visited a pharmacy once hoping to treat Yigeng's Kai blockage. The doctor says that's not what he meant, and instead asked if Yigeng had taken something like the snow ginseng or the Shaolin medicine. Hajin remained silent and he stared at the doctor with a straight face. The doctor told him to forget about his question. He guessed that the Beak clan leader wouldn't give something so precious to someone like Yigeng. He observed Yigeng and told Hajin that he is showing signs of waking up. Hajin began walking away. The doctor called out to him and asked if he wasn't going to stay. Hajin stopped, but he ignored the doctor's comments. He said Yigeng needs to visit the Red Dragon Hall once he wakes up. The patriarch had something to ask him. As Hajin was nearing the door, the doctor called out to him saying even if Yigeng wakes up, it's necessary that he rests first. But again Hajin ignored him. Hajin exited the room quickly and shut the door behind him. The doctor says he knows the young leader position is more powerful with the lack of an older brother, but to him Hajin was being too harsh. Yigeng opened his eyes and tried getting up from the bed. The doctor stopped him saying he shouldn't stand up yet. Yigeng asked the doctor if he knows where Soa is. The doctor says if he means the servant. Then her funeral was hosted 2 weeks ago. Yigeng says he understands and asked the doctor for his sword. The doctor says the patriarch took it. Yigeng got up from the bed and put on his clothes saying he heard the patriarch was looking so he will get going. The doctor protested against the idea. He asked Yigeng if he wasn't in pain. The doctor knows that Yigeng is in extreme pain from all the Kai and blood ruptures. Considering the seizures from the Kai blockage and the chemotherapy treatment he went through in his previous life, this much pain is nothing. He turned to the doctor and says he is used to the pain. He thanked the doctor for saving his life and began making his way towards the door. The rumors said Yigeng was a lazy and fragile fool, but the doctor could now see that those rumors were false. Yigeng made his way to the Red Dragon Hall, but before he entered he made sure to take a deep breath in order to calm his nerves. But all his preparations were undone by Xiangchen, who was sitting behind Yigeng's father. Xiangchen says it's nice to see Yigeng awake. 200 years ago, after the heydays of the divine immortal blade, the Beak clan went into a decline. However, the clan was able to find its light thanks to the new patriarch Beak Ryusen. Because of his supreme martial arts, Beak Ryusen was given the nickname Merciless Iron Blood, and Yigeng never thought he would see the day someone treated his father like how Xiangchen was treating him. Xiangchen noticed Ryusen's beard and tried to grab it, saying it was pretty nice. Yigeng freaked out because he thought Xiangchen would actually be able to grab it. Ryusen angrily called out to Yigeng. Yigeng was distracted by Xiangchen and had completely forgotten he was in the Red Dragon Hall. He knelt down asking Ryusen to forgive his rudeness. He says his body hasn't fully recovered yet, and he asked Ryusen if he called for him. Ryusen says he called for him and asked him if he knew the identities of the assassins that attacked him. Yigang didn't know how to respond and wondered if Ryusen was testing him in some type of way. Yigang says he thinks it was the Demonic Alliance since they're most wary of the Beak family expanding its forces. He told Ryusen that the assassins hid their martial arts so he couldn't confirm if it was the Demonic Alliance. But it shouldn't have been the Demonic Alliance because even if the Demonic Alliance members aren't in their right minds, they wouldn't dare put a hand on a member of the Beak clan. And if they were willing to risk war, they wouldn't have attacked him, who isn't even the young leader. Ryusen grabbed his beard, saying Yigang seems to have changed. And even though that pleased him, he is disappointed that Yigang couldn't figure out the identities of the assassins. He told Yigang that everyone else but him died, and asked if he wasn't ashamed as a direct bloodline of the Beak clan. Yigang told Ryusen that he is happy to be alive, because he needs to be alive in order to avenge the dead. Ryusen laughed and called Yigang up to him. Yigang made his way up to Ryusen, and after coming face to face with him, Ryusen said he wanted to know how Yigang eliminated those assassins. He was curious because the sword traces left on their bodies were definitely of the Heaven and Earth blade technique. Yigang didn't know how to respond. He knew the other clan members would find it suspicious that he killed those assassins when he can't even use internal energy. But even if he tells Ryusen the truth, there is no way things would work out how he imagined it to. So he decided to give a response that mixed in the truth as much as possible. He told Ryusen that at the end of the secret room passageway he found a strange place marked with a line. And the moment he stepped foot in it, his mind felt strange and his body moved on its own and fought the assassins. Not long after that, he says he lost consciousness. Ryusen says what a strange phenomenon. In fact, it was too strange. He grabbed Yigang's hand and began injecting his Kai into his body. However, much to his disappointment, Yigang's Kai blockage hasn't improved and he has no internal energy. He told Yigang that he was dismissed. Before leaving, Yigang asked Ryusen if he could get the rusty sword back. Ryusen laughed and he asked Yigang if he wanted to pretend to be a martial artist. He picked the sword up with his Kai and threw it at Yigang, saying he could keep the rusty sword. Outside the Red Dragon Hall, Xiangchen asked Yigang if the Beak clan members' eyes don't work anymore. He questioned why they were calling the sword rusty and garbage, and asked if they couldn't recognize the renowned sword. Yigang says he didn't think Ryusen's description of the sword was harsh. He asked Xiangchen why he thought the sword was so great. Xiangchen says the sword is made from a meteorite and it's his favorite sword. He even gave it the name Meteor. Yigang recognized the name and said the Meteor sword was in the Court of Elders. Xiangchen says the sword in the Court of Elders must be a fake, but he doesn't understand why they would put a fake in the Court of Elders. He told Yigang that the patriarch was cold and cruel as a serpent. He asked Yigang how a father can hate his own son so much. Yigang says he doesn't think Ryusen hates him because he got him the Millennium Snow Ginseng in secret. Yigang says he was also feeling better after exiting the Red Dragon Hall. Xiangchen questioned if Ryusen grabbed Yigang's wrist earlier to try and heal his internal injuries. He asked Yigang if his father was the type who is too embarrassed to openly express his love. Yigang replied saying he doesn't know. Inside the Red Dragon Hall, after all the elders of the Beak clan left, Ryusen sat back in his chair and lets out a sigh of relief. The clan manager approached, praising him for healing some of Yigang's injuries with internal energy without the elders noticing. Ryusen says Yigang is the one who should be praised because he is moving even though his body is a complete mess. He said he wanted to thank the physician for treating Yigang's injuries. The clan manager says he will make sure to reward the physician. Ryusen asked the clan manager if he was too harsh on Yigang. They hadn't seen each other in a long time. He wanted to hug him but couldn't. The clan manager told Ryusen not to worry because he is certain Yigang would understand how he truly felt someday. Ryusen says it would be best if Yigang never finds out and maybe he would feel better if he blamed him. The clan manager agreed and said he is still concerned about the incident Yigang described earlier. He said perhaps Yigang's martial prowess is awakening. He says Ryusen said so himself when the two young masters were still young, that two geniuses were born. Ryusen says it would be pointless if Yigang awakened his martial arts prowess, because it would only push those who wanted to make Yigang the young leader. Ryusen says he wanted Yigang to live the remaining years of his life freely. The clan manager apologized, saying he should not have brought it up. Ryusen accepted his apology and said he can't just leave those guys alone. He asked the clan manager to send out the Red Dragon Brigade. Inside the Ruby Training Hall, Xiangchen asked Yigang if he was saying his father is harsher on him in order to justify having the second son be the young leader. Yigang says Xiangchen was correct. This disgusted Xiangchen because Yigang's father was being manipulated by the elders. Yigang turned to Xiangchen and said it was all his fault. Xiangchen looked confused, so Yigang explained that because Xiangchen lived a long life as the master of the immortal divine art, there are a bunch of family members above his father who are still alive. His great-grandmother is one of them. He asks Seongchan how his father is supposed to refuse the elders when they are older and in a higher position. Seongchan said some gibberish to avoid answering Yigang's question. Yigang sat in a meditation posture and told Seongchan he was ready. Seongchan said he would start the lesson. He told Yigang that using core energy when there's a disconnect between Kai and blood is simpler than he thinks. Yigang got excited to hear the solution. But after Seongchan told him the solution was to die, all of his excitement disappeared. Seongchan told Yigang to calm down and said he would be using a different method. He asked Yigang if he knew what Kai blockage is. Yigang explained that it's a rare disorder you're born with where the veins in which Kai flows are disconnected. Seongchan says Yigang's answer is incorrect and explained that all living beings have Kai flowing through them. He says if Kai could not flow through his body, he would already be dead. If Kai is the water that runs river and the veins are the paths the river takes, then Kai blockage would be like if the river is as narrow as a creek. Yigang asked if he could avoid dying and learn martial arts if his veins are wider. Seongchan says it would be nice if Yigang's veins could widen, but from what he knows that is impossible. Seongchan says he has killed countless people but he has never seen Kai veins himself. He said the only veins he has seen are the ones that carry blood around the body. But when he possessed Yigang's body, he used himself as a pillar to connect the Kai veins. Yigang asked Seongchan if he could put it in terms he could understand. And Seongchan says if he worked hard he might be able to connect the Kai veins with the power of will. Seongchan's words reminded him of the work hard lecture he received in his previous life from one of his teachers. Seongchan assumed Yigang hadn't learned the Fire Sun Mind technique, and he asked if he had trained his Tai Yin Meridian. Yigang said he had, and he told Seongchan that he always trained it to take care of himself. The Beat clan's generational secret, Immortal Divine Arts, is made up of the Fire Sun Mind technique and the Tai Yin Meridian. The Fire Sun Mind technique allows one to quickly gather internal energy, and the Tai Yin Meridian is for clearing the mind. Seongchan asked Yigang if most people in the clan trained with the Fire Sun Mind technique as the foundation. Yigang said yes and explained that most people finish training their meridian at the age of 7 and then start focusing on the Fire Sun Mind technique. Seongchan smiled menacingly and says they stopped because the Tai Yin Meridian is incomplete, but he was able to complete it in his last years, so he is sure it'll be helpful to Yigang. Yigang didn't know the Tai Yin Meridian was incomplete. He asked Seongchan if what he was saying was true. Seongchan said yes, even though he couldn't treat Yigang's Kai blockage himself, he can teach him something. Yigang became excited. If the Divine Immortal Blade says so, then it might actually be possible to learn martial arts with his body. He asked Seongchan to teach him. 6 hours later they were still in the training hall, and Yigang was trying to punch Seongchan. Yigang failed again and Seongchan says his spirit is terrible but his tenacity isn't bad. He asked him to start again from the beginning. Seongchan says the real purpose of the Tai Yin Meridian is to manifest your will into reality. He says Yigang would understand the true meaning of that once he is able to touch his soul. He said since Yigang is a quick learner, it will take him 3 years to reach him and 10 years to be able to slay him. The more Seongchan learnt about Yigang, the more he liked him. Yigang stepped back and prepared to touch Seongchan again. Seongchan was already overjoyed thinking about training Yigang. However, the realm he wants to reach will be impossible to attain unless he dies once and gets revived. But he thought there was no way for a 14-year-old boy like Yigang to attain that kind of awakening. Yigang took a deep breath in and remembered the moments in his previous life. He hadn't forgotten what he felt in those moments and the thoughts he had. He applied those moments into his fist and was able to touch Seongchan. Seongchan was left speechless. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, then hit the like button.